Tonight on Newsworthy, we're joined by a man whose life reads like a novel. And lucky for us, he writes them too. Lou Pugliese is a retired senior manager from Toyota Motors with deep experience in both national and international business. He later pivoted into academia as a business professor in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, and now he's turned his sharp eye and worldly insight towards storytelling. Lou's fiction blends mystery, history, and a passion for obscure research, drawing from a life rich in travel and transformation. He's published poetry through Vox Poetica, explored the roots of prejudice in his dissertation, and is a proud member of both the Mystery Writers of America and the Florida Writers Association. From car sales to classrooms to captivating novels, Lou Pugliese is here to share the stories behind the stories. Lou, welcome to Newsworthy.
Great to be here.
That was amazing, Jerry. Welcome, Lou. We're glad you're here, man.
Yeah, me
All the
too.
way from
I
Florida.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. He was telling us about the gorgeous weather and turned his camera around and showed us some of the scenery from his back deck. Yeah. Now we're wishing we were down there in Florida as well.
Well, he did say one thing. He said that it was how many days over 90?
100.
Yeah, see, it was 73 here today or 74. I'm
was.
good with that.
I know. I'm wearing a hoodie today. It was awesome.
I got to wear jeans yesterday and not melt. That was nice.
Now, where are you from originally?
I was born in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
and grew
Jerry used
up
to
in
live right
Northern
outside of
Virginia and stayed there. Oh, let's see. I guess I was about 30 before Toyota started moving me around. And then we were in Pennsylvania. We were in Los Angeles for a long time, back in Baltimore area. And then when I retired from Toyota, down in Shenandoah Valley, and we had a home here in Florida as well. And when I told my wife, I said, I'm done with teaching now. I'm going to retire completely. She said, "Do you mind if we live in one house?" And so she got to pick this time, and she picked Florida.
Not a bad pick.
Good choice.
I would also say, though, that the Shenandoah Valley might not have the weather of Florida, but it is an absolutely stunningly beautiful area.
It
Jerry
was
used to live
definitely
in-
my favorite. We had 8 acres of land there, and we were surrounded by horse farms, and it was just
Oh, wow.
the most beautiful place and the most beautiful house that a couple had built this house for them to live in. And then 2008 came and the housing market crashed, and they just couldn't afford to make the move. So they ended up selling their dream house, and we ended up buying it and, staying friends with them, thankfully, because they've been wonderful people. But it was beautiful there.
Yeah, absolutely is. So you're an author. You wrote, I guess, your biggest story, Blame It on the Moon, in 2024. And then you released the prequel to that, Final Exam, in February of this year, and subsequently won the Summer of 2025 Pencraft Award for Literary Excellence. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And also, by the way, I just saw a few days ago that Final Exam is rated number 9 on the Goodreads Best Historical Fiction Mysteries list.
Wow.
And even more noteworthy for me, it had an average rating of 4.95.
Wow.
That's about as close to perfect as you can get. That is quite an accomplishment. So yeah, tell us about Blame It on the Moon.
Well, Blame It on the Moon, I had actually written Final Exam first,
Oh, okay.
but I didn't know it was Final Exam at the time. It was just a book about issues with administrative disappearances and deaths on a small college campus. I don't know where I got that idea from. But then as my first attempt, it really wasn't a very good book. And I didn't know any better. I mean, this is my first foray, and I fortunately had a friend, a woman by the name of Joy Gilstrap. She was Joy Bevis when I knew her in high school. And her husband is John Gilstrap, who's a New York Times bestselling author who's got many, many series out there. And so I contacted Joy and I said, do you think John would go to lunch with me and take a look at this? And so I showed him what I had, and he was very, very kind because it was basically unedited and pornographic at that point. And he suggested that I needed to do what he did 20 years before when he went into writing. He said, if you come out of corporate or you come out of academia or you come out of anything in the world and you decide you're going to be a fiction writer, it's something different. And he said, you got to learn the craft. You got to join the associations. You have to go to the conventions. You have to make the connections. And he said, until you've done that, you're not going to possibly develop any further. And so I took his advice because I already knew what I knew and that it wasn't going to work, as agents' queries were informing me after I got over 100 rejections. And I ended up going to the Florida Writers Association and attending some of their local meetings. And then I ended up getting drafted to actually do the Clay County meetings here. But that was the best thing that could have happened, because now I book a different author or a book cover designer or an editor or a marketing person every single month. And I get to take them to lunch and I get to pick their brains, that and going to the convention. So I go to the Florida Writers Convention and I go to one called Sleuth Fest, which is the mystery writers. And I've met so many great people and so many very, very successful authors who have all just given time freely, to me for, so anyhow, I had that first book and I wasn't exactly sure where I was going about 3 years into the writing journey, but I had studied the craft and I'd been going to the associations. I've been doing everything I was told to do. And I woke up one morning and I told my wife, I said, I had this dream last night and it's a scene from a book. And it's not a book I know anything about. And so I explained it to her, and it actually is kind of the opening of Blame It on the Moon. It's a haunted house, and it's a ghostly apparition appearing from the kitchen of the house. And, an odd conversation about how the ghostly apparition recognizes the person who's in front of him as somebody from 100 years ago. And so I had that and I wrote it down. And then the rest of the book just started emerging. And I got the characters as they fell into place. The characters took the book from there and they started doing things that, I had no idea we were going to do. And it was just the greatest experience. So that book just flowed. It wasn't even a struggle. Although I did need to go back and work with all my new writer friends and say, what do you think? And take their advice on, like, I have the one I call my alpha beta reader, read 6 pages, sent it back. And she said, I'm not reading another page until you get to the chase. You just don't, you got 6 pages of backstory here that I don't care about. And let me tell you where the book starts. And she told me the book started with the ghostly apparition. And so I went back and took that to heart and spread the backstory through the rest of the story and listened to all my critics on what I could do to improve it. And the book just came together. It was amazing, but then it drifts into Civil War history. It drifts into, bless you.
So sorry.
Ouija seances. It drifts into paranormal investigations in cemeteries, and the setting of the house. The house is actually a home that was a hospital during the Civil War, and that's based on a friend I grew up with. My first best friend when I was a little kid. His family lived in a house that was supposedly a hospital during the Civil War, and so that influenced that. But it just, the way it came together, and then as I did the additional research, because I wanted things to be very correct, obviously, like how to do a seance, how to do a paranormal investigation, how to do an archaeological dig, because they actually dug up the past. And that's the kind of stuff that really fascinates me.
So
anyhow,
Lou, I got a couple of questions for you.
Yes, please.
First, I want to say that the best thing that any creator can have is someone who is going to give honest, concise criticism. And we're lucky to have that on the show. I have a couple of buddies. My father-in-law actually listens to the show, and I've taken a lot of what he said. Hey, this was good, this wasn't so good, and helped to get us better. But I 100% agree, and I'm glad that you have that. So many people have yes people, and they just keep putting out product that isn't very good because they're surrounding themselves with people that won't be honest with them. We try to have a meeting every week, or at least every other week. What can we do better? What do we need to improve on? Because I think that's how you get better. But my first question is, this book starts with the apparition, as you said, but what are your personal thoughts? Have you ever seen a ghost?
No, I never have. But I've certainly had, and I want to think everybody has, experiences or things that you can't explain, that just kind of fall into place or appear, or the right people show up at the right time. Unexpectedly. So I have some skepticism. I have a sister who's very big into paranormal investigations, and she helped me a lot with the background on that and directed where to go in my research for that. But I'm not sure how deeply she believes it either. So we actually did one together in St. Augustine at the old jail here. And there were a number of people who felt they had connected during the time we were there and said, look, I have this evidence on my REM pod. And, she and I were like, gosh, we were right there, and that didn't happen for us. So I don't know. But part of the, and this goes back to the dissertation prejudice, part of the basis for that is remaining open-minded. And so from the years of doing that, I'm passionate about remaining open-minded to anything. So I'm open to, and I believe I've had some experiences that verge on the spiritual from time to time, and I just don't want to shut anything out. So do I believe? I'm not a passionate believer. I'm not a cultist in the paranormal, but I'm not one to say that I know better.
Yeah, Jerry's the big skeptic of the bunch of us. He doesn't believe anything. I'm pretty sure he doesn't believe shoes exist.
I believe in everything I've experienced, and my experiences are a lot like Lou. I've yet to experience any of that. So until and I'm very similar to Lou. I'm not a disbeliever. I don't say that it doesn't exist. I simply say I've yet to have any experiences. So, I would love to have an experience. Hopefully I don't get murdered during it, but I'd love to have an experience.
You mentioned, Lou, about the Civil War and the hospital during the Civil War. In the hometown that I grew up in, there was a house that dates back to the Civil War era. That was also used as a hospital for both blue and gray.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens there, and I personally have never had it. I've had people tell me that it's happened to them, so it's all secondhand. But on certain nights, you can walk past this place, and it's on a corner. There's sidewalks on both sides of it. During the evenings, you can hear the moans and the screams of the soldiers who are being treated there, because obviously medicine wasn't back then what it is today.
Right.
But yeah, when you mentioned that house, it's a white house. It's on the corner. Jerry and I are going to my hometown hopefully this fall. We've been planning this for a couple of years because it's literally 40 minutes from here. Just stupid, but we haven't been there yet. But that's on the list. So
are we
cool.
picking up Mitch's excessive barking?
yeah, but it'll probably be
Okay.
faded out at the end.
It blends in
Okay.
with Steve's dog's barking.
Yeah, pretty much.
I actually thought it was one of yours.
At some point, they'll start barking at each
Come here.
other, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I found really interesting, Lou, Blame It on the Moon kind of begins as a ghost story. You mentioned the friend you sent it to.
Yes.
To her, it began with the apparition. But real quickly, it becomes something more. Part murder mystery, part archaeological adventure, part romance. What inspired you to blend these different genres?
Well, so much of that was, again, as the characters developed, they started taking me to some of those places. I certainly didn't plan it to be a romance from the start, but as these two characters interacted, it just seemed to make sense that they were going to end up together. The archaeological dig made sense because, there were bodies buried on the property. That was part of the history. Did I miss something? Was there another question in there?
No, you covered it. I think you did a great job. I love the fact that it wasn't really a conscious decision. It was something that the characters almost began to take on a life of their own, and they dictated the outcome.
Do you when
Yeah,
you're
it just
writing
even-
something? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was just, it's funny because I did a book club who had read the book, and they were concerned that I might not like what they had to say. And I said, no, that's what I want. I want you to have your book club meeting as if I were not here. I
Right.
really, really want to know. And I heard some things like I use a lot of short chapters, and they really liked that because you could take a break in the book, which I like too. The dog they liked. But there was one woman there who said, I knew who the bad guy was from the start. And I'm like, well, that's amazing because I didn't know until about 5/8 of the way into the book. I had no idea.
That's funny.
And then the other women all agreed that they didn't know either. So it's just, there's
Yeah.
but for me, the writing is very much an emergent process.
I often visualize, and we've interviewed another author or two, and one of the things that they did and that I can see, if I were to ever write a book, I would have to visualize it as a movie and then put it into words because I'm a visual person.
Yeah, I'm the same
I
way.
lost
So-
I lost
is that-
part of the connection there for a minute.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, do you when you're writing, do you visualize it like it's on a movie screen when you're putting it into words, or is it just straight from your brain into words?
No, as the scenes come together, I do see them. I mean, to me, it's a very visual thing. It could be a movie. So yeah, I see it in full color.
Nice.
So before you became a writer, you obviously had different careers. Were you like an avid reader? Like, how did you kind of get into like that writing is what my next career is going to be?
Well, I started writing in high school. My mother wanted me to be a writer, and she wanted to write with me. Now, my mother unfortunately died fairly young. She was in her 50s, and so we never got to write that great novel together because I got distracted by having to work for a living. But for my mother, I took, well, I said for my mother, it's not for my mother. I took a creative writing class in high school. I liked the teacher. I knew my mom would like that I was taking creative writing. There was a girl in the class by the name of Valerie Wilson. And so probably there were a lot of people in the class that were trying to solve the mysteries of creative writing. I was interested in the mysteries of what was in Valerie Wilson's halter top. So that put me in the class. And as it turned out, I got, I was told by the teacher and by other readers that my writing was very good. And I ended up being the editor-in-chief of our high school literary magazine after that.
Wow.
But then I had to go to work. So the next 37 years were in the automotive business. And there's a lot of performance. There's a lot of meetings and events. There's all kinds of things. But then from there, when I knew I wanted to go into teaching. So while I was with Toyota, I took, did I mention that the career was Toyota? The career was Toyota Motors. I retired from there. I went into teaching at Bridgewater College in Shenandoah Valley. Now it's all academic. Now it's publish or perish. So you have to be putting out publications. So I published my dissertation. I had sure, we'd like to do this. And I think it was because it was so obscure. The key word in it is entitativity. And nobody had ever heard of it for like me and 7 people on the planet. So I think their goal was to find the most obscure stuff and hope it took off. But at any rate, I published that. And then I started publishing poetry again when I was teaching. So that was warming me back up to when I stopped teaching and I said, I can write now. I'm going to pick up on Mom's book. I'm going to go wherever she wanted me, because everything I had done, career-wise, education-wise, everything else, was because my mom wanted me to do that. Though she was long gone, I stayed on the path, and I think she'd be happy with the books.
Awesome. Well, I just want to throw out also that I like the fact that you said that she was young in her 50s. That makes me feel very good.
You still got some time left?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, I'm in my 50s. I just turned 50. So I'm glad that that's still young to some people.
Question for you. The protagonist in your novels, Richard Kraft, he seems to be deeply affected by personal loss, as well as the haunted legacy of his family home. How did you develop that character? And is any of it drawn from
I just had another glitch in the podcast there. He seems to be deeply affected by, and I lost you.
Yeah, Richard Kraft, from what I had read, he seems to be very deeply affected by personal loss, as well as the haunted legacy of his family home. My question is, how did you develop that character, and is any of it drawn from personal experience?
Well, I'm trying to think of, because I still have my brothers and sisters. Lost my mother young, but other parents all went away at normal times for parents to go away. I have had some very close friends that have passed, and a few suicides along the way, which is, really difficult to process.
Sure.
So I don't know that that's not some of what cooks away in the back of that character, because I feel that character strongly. That was an easy character for me to write from in a first person. And that's also why I think I was so surprised by the other people that showed up and how they interacted with him.
I
sense.
am. We've talked about that a little bit on the show. You mentioned suicide. I just can't wrap my head around how hopeless you have to be to that be the answer. Now, Jerry and I off air talked a lot about Dr. Kevorkian and self-assisted at the end of life when you've got a terminal illness and all that. But
It's a
just
different ball game.
it's a whole different ball game of someone,
Yeah.
you know, some of the big names, for instance, Robin Williams, Kurt Cobain, just people that have fell into
Yeah.
a depression and just didn't have a way out. And man, that's just that I don't care who it is, whether I know them or not, that affects me in a way that I don't even like how it affects me. And it has nothing to do with me, honestly. It's just bad.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing like it. For the first one I experienced was on a birthday, and it was at work. And there was a guy there who on birthdays would hit people in the face with a pie. So I was hiding from him. Well, it turned out he was in the parking lot dead in his car.
Oh.
And he was found later that morning, and it was just the most stunning thing. And the thought of, how hopeless, helpless. And then in other things I encountered later in life with both myself and other people I've been close to that had fairly hopeless, helpless situations that they traveled through. It's just stunning to me that first off, at that point, you're thinking that you're just escaping and you're solving problems for everyone. But gosh, the aftermath of what it does to people around you is,
I can't imagine.
just insane.
Well, I didn't mean to make
Well,
it
that was a
turn
good
to
transition,
the
huh?
bad. I didn't mean to make it turn and go to the negative there, but man, that just I don't think that's a topic you can ever talk about too much because there's always that one person that you might be talking to. So
Kind of along
Right.
the same vein, I saw where several readers have praised the way that your story handles loneliness and also unexpected friendships. An example is the bond between Richard, the dog Lincoln, as well as other characters. Was exploring those themes intentional? Did you have that in mind to begin with?
I don't know that I did, but it came up very strongly in the book because it's things that I've found in my own life. That it was important to have it be not a Richard Kraft book. It's an ensemble cast, and how people influence each other in their lives and how they support each other when they trust and love each other and they have some common goals. And so that's kind of the way that grew up. But it's something that's important to me. I have groups of friends that go back to high school. And in fact, I was just with a group of friends this last weekend that goes back to when we first worked for Toyota, 40 years ago. And we've stayed in touch, and Toyota hosts us we were at the racetrack in Daytona this weekend, and they still treat us like we're part of the family. And it's just so
awesome.
cool. So yes, I think at some point I wanted that feeling in the book, that it is so cool to be able to create a family out of friends.
Lou, what is, you wrote the book, obviously, so you like it all, but what is your favorite part of the book?
Huh.
Yes.
Kind of like asked to pick your favorite child, right?
Oh,
Easy
yeah.
to do.
I'd like to say the first official date, but no, wow, that's hard.
Well, while you're thinking about it, I'll tell you a quick story. You were talking about your class in high school, your writing class, and how you wanted to get in that girl's halter top. The only soccer match I've ever watched in my entire life was the same reason. I didn't care. Literally hate soccer. But a cute girl that I wanted to date was playing a match and invited me to it. And I went there and I sat there and watched the whole thing. The one and only soccer match I've ever watched in my
They
entire
tied
life.
1-1 or 1-0. Was
Yeah,
it like a
no
1-0 game?
I have no idea. I
Who
couldn't
knows who
tell you. It
cares?
was terrible. That's all I know. But she was cute. Looked good in them short shorts.
So how'd that work out?
The question is, did you have the guts that Lou does? When Lou told his story, he named the girl's name. We want to hear the girl's name that you went to see.
I don't care to say it because she knows. She knows for sure. Her name was Lisa Early at the time.
Very nice.
How about that?
Very nice. You impressed me.
So Lou, I know you talked about how when you first started writing, you went to a lot of conventions and started talking with a bunch of writers. Is there any other advice that you would give to new writers? I know we talked to other authors and they were talking about just the issue with how many books are coming out and with AI and all these different issues. Is there any other advice that you could give up and coming authors?
Well, I wouldn't personally worry about that stuff. I just concentrate on. There's a couple of books that were influential. One was that every writer has recommended to me is called On Writing by Stephen King, and it's probably the definitive book of the craft of writing. But what I really liked about it is it's semi-autobiographical. So as I'm reading Stephen King's life, I'm saying, oh man, he went through some of the same issues I went through. And the way the writing comes to him, that it's okay not to, there's two types of writers. There's plotters and pantsters. And I'm very much a pantster, and so is Stephen King. So plotters will write down everything. They'll have everything outlined, everything developed, every single character trait before they start writing. And I just let it come, and he did too. So I said, well, it's okay. If it's working for Stephen King, it's going to be okay for me. So that was one important book. Another one that somebody recommended to me, and I've never even read it, but I bought it because the title is Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit. And it was just so perfect. And I thought about the book I initially handed to John Gilstrap, the pornographic, unedited murder scene and I think that's the whole deal for writers is the book's got to be the right book. It doesn't matter how you market it. It doesn't matter where AI comes in. It doesn't matter anything else. If it's not a good book, it doesn't make any difference. So just focus on learning the craft, making the connections, writing the good book. And each book, now that this next one that I'm into, I'm finding when I go back, because there's times I have to go back and read through 100 pages to make sure I've kept the continuity. And I'm thinking, wow, I really like this book. I didn't have that experience the first time out.
Hey, Lou, we have a question from one of our listeners. So I want to throw this out there to you. It says, I finished writing a fantasy novel and reached the stage of querying, but after so many rejections that I've lost count, when you were taking your paranormal book from manuscript to publication, what kept you moving forward through the rejections and the uncertainty of the publishing process?
Wow. Faith. I mean, it was just believing that the right things were going to show up at some point. But also, I'm a little older. So I got to the point where, as I'm talking to all these other writers who are traditionally published, and they're telling me, you don't have to be traditionally published. You can self-publish. It's not the stigma it was at one time. And we went through what publishers do nowadays, and what they don't do. They don't do your marketing anymore unless you're one of the top 5 people with one of the top 5 publishers and agents. They don't get you on Good Morning America right away. So these things don't happen. In fact, when you query an agent now, the query form usually says, "What is your marketing plan?" And I thought that I was going to get a great agent, and they were going to get a great publisher, and they were going to take care of all the book marketing. That was my original plan. But since that doesn't happen anymore, then I got through the what you can and can't control. So like I get to be involved in the design of my book covers. Traditionally published authors don't get that. I get
Yeah,
to
that's
pick
cool.
the title. They don't get that. I get final word on after I've gotten all the feedback on the final edits, and they don't get that. And that would frustrate me greatly. But then I thought, here I am, I'm 70 years old. I know I look 45 and I'm in great shape, but I thought if I did get a traditional agent at this point, I'm 3 to 4 years away from actually holding the book in my hands. And I don't know how far away from what I really wanted the book to be. And then I published my next book. Another 3 to 4 years, I'm not going to get 3 books out. So I finally took the advice and did a self-publish on Blame It on the Moon. It's been far more successful than a self-published book is supposed to be. And we're on that same path with Final Exam. And I have no doubt the third one's going to do well too. And then I put out a poetry book as well. And that was really for some friends that I did that. But so I'm just going to keep writing and keep trying to make the books better. That's
So-
the only advice I would have for.
What have you done that you think has made the biggest impact as far as marketing goes? Because I feel like if you were self-publishing, that would be kind of the biggest fear is like, okay, now I wrote the book, I have these books, like how am I going to get this thing out there?
Well, I mean, you got to have a plan. And of course, I had grown up in the car world with very much a marketing organization. And then I taught marketing and business for a number of years.
That helps.
So I had to do more research then as well. And I did marketing research. And then if you ever get around to doing a dissertation, the research on that is absolutely hysterical, and the critical feedback. So all of those helped to get me to where I needed to be. But then for the marketing, I said, well, I need a website. And I'd had a website when I was doing some consulting work previously. So I knew how to do that, and I knew how to do it on my own. So I just went to GoDaddy and I put my website together. I had a Facebook page to keep in touch with all the high school friends. And so I put up a Facebook author page and linked all the friends to it. I didn't know anything about Instagram, but I came to find out by drafting a young person that I could link Facebook and Instagram, and I could update them from the same place. So I didn't have to know a lot. I'm still sure there's more that I could know there. I was on LinkedIn. So I used LinkedIn. TikTok. So I have some videos for the book. I throw those out there. One that was a surprise, and I just did it on a whim, was Nextdoor. So there's this Nextdoor app where people crap on their HOAs for sending them snotgrams and stuff like that. And I put out the book on Nextdoor. There's a local author in your neighborhood. Here's the book. Well, from that, I got book clubs. And I got
awesome.
a women's club in a local community that's 100 plus strong. And I got a local arts festival, and I got to be in some local bookstores, out of a crapshoot that I just threw out there. So then I started researching all of the Facebook book pages and, the different book clubs and genres and stuff. So every week I update all of those sites with fresh content every single week. And people say, gosh, that's just so much work. And I'm like, not once you get it done. It takes me an hour. Takes me an hour every week to maintain all that. But the biggest breakthrough has probably been I just recently started working with a company that does Amazon ads. And they will take your ads and they will manage. So you pay them a couple $100 a month, and they will take whatever budget you pick and they'll manage your ads daily through keywords. Because when you do the book, you can only use 7 keywords and I think 3 categories. When you place the ads, you can use 1,000 keywords. So you can put bestseller in there knowing it's going to get a hit. It may not get a click through to a sale, but they'll manage those keywords and throw out the ones that aren't performing and play up the ones that are performing. So their fine tuning on that over several months changed everything, where I was hitting a lot of lulls where I might not see any activity. Now I see daily thousands of page reads through Kindle and, regular sales, at least one a day. So that's been the biggest thing that I found of where I could use somebody else to help me. So now I have stability on Amazon ads that I'll never have to worry about. It'll take
That's
care
amazing.
of itself.
Very nice.
So we ask this of all of our authors that come on the show, which we absolutely love. I love interviewing people who have written books because creativity to me is something I just find fascinating. I'm creative like here to a point, and then beyond that, there's so much to be said and appreciated as somebody whose mind can think outside the box.
You're not giving yourself credit.
Whatever. So who is your favorite author? When Lou is sitting by the pool and he wants to read something that's not Lou's writing, who's your favorite? Who's your go-to?
Probably 2, and they're both one. Neither of them are Stephen King or John Grisham, although I read those. But people that I've met since I started this journey. So John Gilstrap is one. I really do like his stuff, and I owe him. Another one who I also owe is Lisa Black. She's the current president of the Florida Mystery Writers. But I met her at a convention when she was doing a workshop. And we talked after the workshop and we continued talking, and she's even looked at some of my crap and given me some feedback on it. But I really like her books because I guess both of them have a style where there's characters in the books that are don't take themselves too seriously. They are just not always perfect. They're doing the best they can. And there's injections of humor just when you need it. So those two, John Gilstrap and Lisa Black, are probably my current 2 favorites.
Nice.
By the way, do you enjoy, obviously not your favorite, you didn't mention him, Michael Connelly?
I do like Michael Connelly. And I enjoyed him fine, but I don't know that most of those other authors, I didn't get the same sense of character connection.
The reason I ask is your writing reminds me of Michael Connelly's a little bit.
Yeah, somebody
Only
told
reason I
me
asked that.
one of the drafts of Devers is another one. One of the deaths in Final Exam, somebody read just that chapter and said, "You write just like Devers."
You said you did some poetry. Do you have a poetry book out? Because
He does.
I have very recently just gotten back into poetry. There's this young lady on she does all the TikToks and all that stuff, and man, I'm just blown away every time I listen to one of hers. And so I'm very interested in reading your book about poetry. What was the name of that?
The name of that is Rest Stops on a Journey. It's also on Amazon, and it's It's on Kindle, and I think it's on audio, although I can't imagine what the audio sounds like because it's the Amazon AI generated audio.
That's all right.
But it's also semi autobiographical. So it actually starts out with the Valerie Wilson story.
That's awesome.
So tell everyone the name of your book, where they can get it. Obviously, most people can get it anywhere, but go ahead and give yourself a big plug and what you got coming up in the next month or so, and let everybody know all the things.
Okay. So the books that are out there are the one on my dissertation. Please don't buy it. You can download it for free from GWU's dissertation sites because it's $70 for this stupid little paperback. But the ones that matter, Blame It on the Moon is the centerpiece and beginning of the series. Blame It on the Moon, Haunted House Mystery. There's just so many things. You asked me my favorite part about the book.
I did.
I think it's the cover.
That's a cool.
Wow. Okay.
It's a cool cover.
And-
I like it.
Well, the cool cover is that that house on the cover belongs to a guy. Mayor of Elkton, Virginia. His first name is Josh. He's a former student of mine, and he bought that house to restore it, and that's the one that ended up on the cover.
Wow,
So that
that's
was
awesome.
I like that connection. So anyhow, the books are Blame It on the Moon. That's the haunted house mystery with lots of Civil War history. The prequel to that is somewhere in Blame It on the Moon. There's a discussion among some of the guys, and they're talking to Don Weston, who is a Civil War historian who's helping out to value some artifacts. And they said, Don, how can you, I understand you used to be a cop in Philadelphia, and now you're chief of police at this little tiny liberal arts college. And how can you go from all that activity to nothing? And he makes the comment that, well, last year we had quite a bit of serious crime activity right where I was. Well, that is the book Final Exam. It's what happened in the previous year where he was the chief of police.
Wow.
And then the third book that's coming out is going to be called The Portal. And it's one of the other favorite. When I've gotten feedback, people really like Don Weston, and they liked Vicky Roadcap was another character in there who's a paranormal person who part owner in a paranormal store. And in the new book, I wonder if this is a spoiler. She dies in the first sentence.
Oh Lord!
A spoiler? I guess not.
You heard it here
Spoiler
first,
the
folks.
sentence.
That's definitely a spoiler.
But she gets revived.
Oh,
But in the
That's another
time,
spoiler.
now I got an airplane.
We have to put a spoiler warning on the.
In the
on the
time that
notes.
she is in a coma, she visits the portal, which is the place between here and there. It's the place where everybody travels, coming or going. And she experiences a number of people in that trip, and then that book takes off from there. So those are the three in the series so far, but there's also an infant who was born. There was a pregnancy in Blame It on the Moon that becomes a birth in the portal, and that infant will be the next book after the portal.
Oh wow. Okay.
that's I of all the books that we hear about on a daily basis, I'm not gonna lie, I'm most excited to read these. I can't wait to dig into them because this is my cup of tea. I'm excited. Lou, we so very much appreciate you coming on the show tonight and hanging out with a bunch of boys from Kentucky. I know you're a busy person, and I just can't thank you enough.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. You guys have made me more than comfortable. I really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Perfect.